Maybe it reveals something about who I am. Maybe it's the guilt my parents instilled in me to keep me obedient as a child. Or maybe it's just how I was made. All I know is that even as a youngster there were nights I'd wake sweating, convinced I'd done some awful thing. The idea would gnaw at me, the proof was out there somewhere, and it was only a matter of time before someone found it. My chest would race and I'd bolt upright, soaked in fear, trying in vain to get back to sleep. Strange thing is, those nightmares stopped. When I first met my wife, she was the picture of kindness and warmth. She laughed at my jokes and my mother liked her the minute they met. The first few years of marriage felt perfect, but everything shifted about 6 months after our daughter was born. That's when I began to notice a change. At first it was tiny, barely noticeable, but bit by bit it became clear. Having our son made that change more obvious, and as time went on her behavior worsened. She grew short-tempered and easily annoyed, and her words toward me and the children became sharp. Motherhood seemed to press on her in a way I couldn't grasp, as if it had transformed her into someone I didn't know. I tried to talk with her to find out why, but those talks always dissolved into petty fights she expertly engineered. Eventually I stopped trying. What had once been a hopeful marriage was now broken by some unseen force, and we merely coexisted. If you ask me what I did to bring this on, I couldn't tell you. She wasn't cruel, only restless, always wanting more and never satisfied with what she had. Over the years she found more reasons to be away, more diversions to occupy her time. I'd come home from work to see her walking past, heading out. "You need to fix dinner." "I'm going out," she'd say. With time those departures became a relief. Her being gone made the house calm. The nights she did stay were the worst. I ended up doing everything. Cooking, cleaning, shopping, keeping the household going. The kids grew close to me, and I became both mother and father to them. But it shouldn't have been that way. A father wants to come home to his children, and he trusts their mother to be the center of their lives. Yet instead of running to her, my kids would often hide in their rooms until I returned. Then they'd appear, eager to spend time with me. I realized I didn't know my wife anymore. She had come from a fractured home. Her mother had cheated on her father, and that betrayal had shaped how she viewed relationships. She once vowed she would never repeat her mother's mistakes. In the end she did. Another promise broken. The moment of truth arrived one night in late March after the kids were asleep. She walked into the living room with a cold, distant look and said, "David, we need to talk." No softness, no warmth. The tone of a teacher scolding a pupil. She told me she planned to spend her nights with another man. I had suspected it for a long time, so there was no shock. If anything, I felt a strange relief. It wasn't new news, and it promised less friction for me. I had already stopped sleeping in our bed and moved to the guest room. Her leaving would merely simplify life. At first I thought my calm was a victory for her. But just before she left I thought I saw a flicker of disappointment in her face. Was she aiming to wound me? Did she want a scene so I'd beg her to stay? I didn't give her that. I had accepted that our marriage was finished. Like her father before her, she stayed for the children, not for love. The months that followed felt like a strange new routine. The kids never asked where their mother was. Had she told them? Doubt it. I think they too felt relieved. With spring came the chores. My children and I spent a Saturday cleaning the house from top to bottom, airing rooms, dusting, polishing. It was hard work, but we did it together and celebrated that night with cheeseburgers and root beer floats. After that I tackled the jobs the kids were too small to handle. I rehung a shutter torn off in a storm. With the windows open, I repainted the living room, dining room and entry. I replaced rotten trim and weather stripping. We got the garden ready for summer. In those moments I felt like the three of us were a real family. Of course, there were tasks I couldn't do myself. Each autumn I called pros to service the furnace, and every spring I had the septic tank pumped. The worst job: pulling up sod, finding the lid, lowering that hose into the tank and sucking out the muck. Even on my worst workdays I was glad I wasn't the one doing that. One Friday night I came home expecting quiet. The kids were with their grandparents, and I was looking forward to a peaceful evening. Instead, I walked into a scene that turned my stomach. There in the living room sat my wife and her lover, openly displaying their affair. He was drinking my good scotch, and I felt an irritation I couldn't hide. I didn't mind the affair itself, that was old news, but the scotch felt like a provocation. She wasted no time lecturing me about how he would be staying the weekend, and that they would sleep in what had once been our bed. She even said I could watch if I wanted. For a moment I stood there stunned by the audacity. It soon became obvious that she craved escalation, wanted to humiliate me, to see how far she could push me. In that moment I felt nothing for her. No sorrow, no anger. Only a hollow detachment. I wondered how far she would go and what I needed to do to shield our children from this. I stayed silent. Maybe she mistook my quiet for surrender, for defeat. The truth was, I was deciding whether I even cared anymore. I had already conceded that the woman I married was gone. When she rose, dropped her dress, and walked upstairs with him, I barely blinked. They laughed as they left. He even took the dinner from my hand without speaking. Those childhood nightmares had been frequent once. Waking drenched in sweat, heart hammering, convinced I'd committed an unthinkable wrong and that capture was inevitable. Perhaps those dreams reveal something about my nature. Maybe it was how my parents used guilt to keep me in line. Maybe it was simply who I am. But those dreams ended when I met my wife. She was everything I had ever wanted. Sweet, tender, gentle. She carried a laugh that could brighten any space. And when her smile turned toward me, I felt like the most fortunate man alive. My mother loved her from the very first meeting. For 12 years we built a life side by side. The early years were good, better than good. But 6 months after our daughter was born, something shifted. First, it was barely noticeable. A sharp comment here, a cold glance there. Small things easy to overlook. Then 2 years later our son was born, and whatever light inside her had already begun to dim, went out completely. Year by year, her patience wore thinner, her words cut deeper, her resentment grew stronger. Her anger turned on me first, then on the children. Not openly, not with fists or screaming fits, but with quiet, slicing words, the kind that leave bruises on the spirit instead of the skin. I tried to speak to her. I lost track of how many times, but each effort ended in an argument, as if she were desperate to find reasons to fight, to widen the distance between us. In time I stopped trying. We lived like strangers under the same roof, our lives parallel but never touching. I never knew why. I had committed no great betrayal, no unforgivable act. She was simply unhappy, unable to find peace, always searching for something else. And when she discovered it, when her escapes became too obvious to conceal, she didn't even try. She would brush past me in the hallway as I came home from work. Purse on her shoulder, keys rattling in her hand. "You'll need to fix dinner. I'm going out." The words should have cut, but they didn't. If anything, I was relieved. The nights she was gone were the peaceful ones. The nights she stayed were the ones I dreaded. So I cooked, I cleaned, I raised our children. As they grew, they leaned toward me, their father, when by nature they should have leaned toward her. A mother is meant to be the heart of her children's world. But mine hid in their rooms whenever she was home, waiting for me to return so they could finally come out and breathe. I don't think they missed her when she left. I know I didn't. Her mother had done the same thing to her father, cheated over and over until infidelity became a habit rather than a mistake. My wife had witnessed it all, seen the ruin it caused. She swore she would never become her mother. Another promise broken. The beginning of the end came one evening in late March. The children were asleep when she found me in the living room. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "David, we need to talk." Not honey, not love, just my name spoken like a verdict. She told me without shame that she would be spending her nights with her lover. It wasn't a confession. It was a declaration. As ordinary as telling me to take out the trash. It didn't hurt. Not anymore. I had long suspected, and now I knew. If anything, I felt a wave of relief. The less of her in my life, the better. I think she wanted a different reaction. Rage, pleading, tears. But I gave her none of it. I simply nodded. For a fleeting moment before she left the room, I caught a flicker on her face. Disappointment. She had wanted to wound me. She needed to see me break. I refused to give her that satisfaction. For months, the house felt lighter without her presence. She came and went as she pleased, and I no longer cared where she was. The children never asked, and I never offered answers. Spring arrived, we cleaned, opened the windows, let fresh air sweep away what remained of her. We repainted walls, planted the garden, and became a family of 3. I handled what I could, though some chores were beyond me. Each fall I had the furnace serviced. Each spring I had the septic tank emptied. The worst task imaginable. Digging, uncovering the lid, clearing away years of rot, but necessary. That Friday night I expected the house empty. The children were with their grandparents for the weekend, their escape from a mother who hardly noticed them. I grabbed takeout, ready for a quiet evening. Instead I found them. She was lounging in my living room, draped across a man I didn't know. He held a glass of my best scotch, sipping it like it was his own. She giggled, glancing at me with a look that dared me to respond. "He's staying the weekend," she smirked. "We'll be sleeping in our bed. You can watch if you'd like." The man laughed. I didn't care. Not truly. She meant nothing. He meant even less. But as he walked past, he made a mistake. He struck me, not hard, just a slap, playful to him, meant to shame me. But something inside me snapped. I sat quietly and listened. Listened to their laughter. Listened as they went upstairs. Listened as they put on their performance. Exaggerated noises echoing through the house. And I planned. I fetched the bat by the door, tested its weight in my hands. I pulled the plastic sheets from the garage, the ones meant for painting. Moving silently, I slipped outside. I dug carefully, lifting the sod, uncovering the tank beneath. They never heard a thing. At midnight I climbed the stairs. The door was open. They were too lost in themselves to notice. The bat came down once, twice. They never woke. It was simple in the end. He went first, his body sliding into the blackness. She followed. For a moment I paused. I saw her as she once was. The woman I had adored, the girl I had asked to marry me, the mother of my children. Then I let her fall. The house was silent again. I cleaned carefully, thoroughly. I drove his car to the worst part of town, left it there, tossed his keys into a sewer. Weeks later, the police came and told me what I already knew. She had run away. He nodded. Good riddance. That was 5 years ago. The best years of my life. Every spring when the septic truck comes, a flicker of worry stirs in me. But the bones stay buried. And each time I flush the toilet I smile.